You're watching Talking Points, a focus on the political scene in Lubbock and across the South Plains.
Welcome back. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the big political headlines from this past week. President Trump is denying a report in the Atlantic magazine that says he disparaged American service members killed in battle and chose to skip a 2018 ceremony honoring veterans at a French cemetery, calling them losers to a small group of aides. The president said the story is totally fake and, quote, a disgraceful situation. Joe Biden visited Kenosha, Wisconsin to meet with the family of Jacob Blake, the unarmed black man shot by police in the back 7 times last month. Biden also addressed the recent violence in that city, saying looting won't be tolerated. The vice president said he also spoke to Blake over the phone, who told him even though he's been paralyzed from the waist down, he isn't giving up. A group of current and former Republicans is dead set on making sure Joe Biden wins the November election, and now they've brought their case to Lubbock. Here's 5 Good Minutes with Lincoln Project's Jennifer Harris.
Jennifer, just tell me about the Lincoln Project. Where did this come from? How did the organization get started? And really, what's the purpose of it as we go into this re-election campaign?
Absolutely. Well, the Lincoln Project has really become a nationwide movement, obviously with a very strong presence here in Texas, but nationally, obviously, as well. There are founders that have collectively more than 200 years experience working in political campaigns, electing local, state, and even presidents. So the experience is deep in terms of running a campaign and influencing voters and encouraging voter turnout. And they are singularly focused, as we are, to defeat Trump and Trumpism.
When we hear Lincoln Project, of course, we think of our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, who was a Republican back in the 1800s. So kind of tell us, where does that name come from for folks who may not understand?
Well, I think it's going back to and pointing back to the roots of the Republican Party and truly what makes and what made, at least at one point in time, the Republican Party great and something very admirable and respected across the board. I mean, certainly we can always have differences over policy, but having a strong two-party system is important. And that's why I feel like it's very unfortunate where we're at now to see Donald Trump, in essence, take over the party and destroy and rip down a lot of what has been built, and a lot of what the folks that are on board with the Lincoln Project have, worked their whole careers on, and issues and campaigns that I myself have been involved with for decades. So it's very sad and very frustrating to see the country and the Republican Party taken in such a negative direction.
The Lincoln Project, of course, is making its name known in Texas and has bought some ad time here in the Lubbock area. A very conservative part of Texas, a very Republican stronghold, really probably throughout the country. Tell me, what was the point of that?
Well, I think what you're seeing is the fact that we believe there are Republicans, whether you're in a rural community, suburban community, or a big metro area. It's kind of undeniable the problems that the Trump administration has caused and the corruption that the Trump administration continues to exhibit. When I think about from a Texas perspective, whether you're in the Panhandle or whether you're here in Austin where I am or Houston where I was born, the fact of the matter is, there's things like our own national security and our military. We're rolling up on 70 days ago since Americans first learned that Russia was putting bounties on our troops' head in Afghanistan. The president hasn't done anything to address this and to stand up for our troops. So, if you're in the Lubbock area and you've got, family members who are in the military, this should upset you. There's things like education. The fact of the matter is, rural Texas has long opposed things like vouchers and private school choice. The Texas House repeatedly has rejected that. Yet at the same time, President Trump and his education secretary are forging ahead, trying to push that agenda on the whole country, which is not good for rural communities, and it's not something we've opposed. There's plenty of reasons outside of the very larger scale issues of, say, his handling of the pandemic that I think should even cause rural communities and smaller markets and cities across Texas and across the U.S. cause voters to pause and really reflect on, is this where we want our country to head?
What do you say to folks out here in the Lubbock area, really just the South Plains, who say, I just don't have anything in common with Joe Biden. I've seen him over the years and just can't see eye to eye. And then you add in Kamala Harris to that same thing. What do you say to those folks who are just saying, I may not be all the way with Trump, but I'm not really all the way with Biden? What do you say to those folks?
Again, I think it really comes down to the fact that you can disagree on policy, that we can have those debates about the right course of how we handle the increasing deficit that Trump has driven up, that we can have discussions about the best course forward for our public schools, for our foreign policy. The fact of the matter is, though, Vice President Biden is a decent man, an honorable man. He's someone that I think brings a sense of calm amidst all of the strife and some of the violence that we're seeing in cities across the nation. I think there's something reassuring and calming about Vice President Biden. And again, the fact of the matter is, if you're a voter and you're sitting there thinking about just everything that's happened the past 4 years, and especially what we're going through right now with the global pandemic, you've got to stop and maybe just pause and think to yourself, I may not see eye to eye with Biden or Kamala Harris, but I think they believe in our country and, will stand up for what's right in terms of our institutions and our democracy. And that's what we've really got to focus on. And what, I would hope, even if as a voter, and you've been a lifelong voter for Republicans like I have, when you head to the poll this November, pause a second and really ask yourself, are you comfortable with where this country is headed? And, I know it's going to take a lot of courage to push the button or color in the ballot for Joe Biden, but I think it's absolutely a pivotal moment and something that, we have to take seriously as voters.
I imagine for those current or former Republicans, you may not see eye to eye complete with Joe Biden, especially a Biden-Harris administration. So if Joe Biden wins the election in November, what do those in the Lincoln Project gonna do? Is it you still gonna support Biden? What's gonna happen when you kind of bump heads when it comes to policy, at least?
Well, it's true. I mean, we may disagree on policy. And I think if you ask any individual member of the Lincoln Project or any members that are sort of voters out there that are never Trump or that are just disgruntled or disappointed Republicans, they'd say the same thing. We may not agree on policy, but the fact of the matter is, when it comes to Vice President Biden, you have a man who is decent and honorable. And I think that we can at least agree that we believe in America and we believe in democracy and restoring kind of the good name of our country and putting us back on a better track. So at the end of the day right now, again, we're focused on the November election. Nothing really matters if we aren't able to defeat Trump. We'll keep working until Joe Biden is sworn in as president in January. After that, we'll see what happens. Certainly from my vantage point, I've always been very pragmatic in politics and realized that, you've got to work together sometimes and reach across the aisle, and that, everything isn't black and white when it comes to solving issues, whether it's education or whether it's our national security or whether it's the deficit. Sometimes you got to compromise. And so for me personally, looking ahead to potentially a Biden administration, we'll see what happens. And, in the meantime, too, what Republicans have to do is realize they can't simply be the party of no. We can't just shout socialism or fear and scare tactics. It's time for conservatives really to stand up and take a principled stand and come up with actual solutions to some of the really pressing problems that we face today.